The Senate will come to order. Mr. Panetta, please call the roll.
Bridges. Buckner. Coleman. Cook. Quorum. Danielson. Danielson. Donovan. Finberg. Fields. Gardner. Janal. Gonzalez. Hanson. Heisey. Holbert.
Excused.
Hawkins Lewis. Kirkmeyer. Colker. Lee. Liston. Lundeen. Moreno. Pedersen. Priola.
Senator Lundeen? Do you know where Senator Priola is?
Priola? Am I my brother's keeper? No, but I'm my brother's whip, huh?
Yes.
I do not. Let me find out. Sorry. I do.
Rankin. Rodriguez. Scott.
Here.
Simpson. Smallwood. Sonnenberg. Story. Winter. Woodward. Zenzinger. Danielson.
Here.
And Priola.
Absent.
Mr. President.
Here. With 33 present, 1 absent, 1 excused, we have a quorum. Senator Simpson, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Good morning, everyone. If you'd please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the journal. Senator Buckner.
Good morning. I move that the reading of the journal of Monday, March 8th, 2021 be dispensed with and that the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Senate Services.
March 9th, correctly printed Senate Bills 175, 176, 177, correctly engrossed Senate Bill 107, correctly re-engrossed Senate Bill 40 and 121, correctly enrolled Senate Bills 19, 41, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 54, 83, 109, 110, 111, 112, and 113.
Committee reports.
Mr. President, the Committee on Finance has had it in consideration and had a hearing on the following appointments, recommends appointments be placed on the consent calendar and confirm members of the Colorado Racing Commission for a term expiring July 1st, 2024. Justine Scott Estes of Gibson, Colorado, Republican, from the 3rd Congressional District to serve as representative of the racing industry, reappointed. David Lynn Hoffman of Westminster, Colorado, Democrat from the 7th Congressional District, who has been previously engaged in the racing industry for at least 5 years, reappointed. March 8th, Committee on Finance. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 145 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation and with the recommendation to be placed on the consent calendar. March 8th, Committee on Finance. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 82 be amended as follows, so amended be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. March 8th, Committee on Finance. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 69 be amended as follows, and so amended be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. March 8th, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 91 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. March 8th, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 80 be postponed indefinitely. March 8th, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 96 be amended as follows, and so amended be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation, with the recommendation to be placed on the consent calendar. March 8th, Committee on Health and Human Services. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 128 be amended as follows, so amended be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. March 8th, Committee on Health and Human Services. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 123 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. March 8th, Committee on Health and Human Services. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 126 be amended as follows, and as so amended be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation.
Mr. Panetta, please add Senator Priol to the roll call. Third reading of bills, consent calendar. Third reading of bills, consent calendar. Mr. Panetta, please read the bills listed on the consent please read the bill listed on the consent calendar.
Senate Bill 107 by Senators Danielson and Representatives Young and McClatchin concerning the Carrie Ann Lucas Parental Rights for People with Disabilities Act.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the passage of the bill, the one bill, on the third reading of bill's consent calendar, which includes Senate Bill 107.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 107 on third reading, final passage on the consent calendar. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 107 is passed. Co-sponsors: Senators Hansen, Moreno, Gonzalez, Janal, Hawkes Lewis, Story, Buckner, Bridges, Pedersen, Winter, Rodriguez. Please add the president. General order, second reading of bills. Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of General Order, second reading of bills consent calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes having the motion is adopted. The Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of General Order, second reading of bills, consent calendar, and Senator Zenzinger will take the chair.
The committee will come to order and the court rule is relaxed. Will the clerk please read the title of the bills on general orders, second reading of bills consent calendar?
Senate Bill 75 by Senator Gardner and Representatives Tipper and Young concerning supported decision-making agreements for adults with disabilities and in connection therewith authorizing such agreements as an alternative for or supplement to a guardianship.
Majority Leader Fenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move for the adoption of the bill on the consent calendar and its associated committee report, which includes Senate Bill 75 and the Judiciary Committee report.
Is there any discussion on the adoption of the general order second reading of bills consent calendar committee report? Seeing none, all of those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The aye has it, and the committee report is adopted. Is there any discussion on the bill on consent calendar? Seeing no discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of the bill on general orders, second reading of bills consent calendar. All of those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Majority Leader Fenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is for the committee to rise and report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. The committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come to order. Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has had a bill under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs leave to report it has had under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof, and makes the following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 75 as amended, passed on second reading and ordered, engrossed, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the report.
You have heard the motion. The motion is to the adoption of the committee of the whole report. Are there any no votes? Will the clerk please add the minority leader to the roll call? With 35 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, the committee of the whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 075 is amended, passed on second reading, ordered, engrossed, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. General order, second reading of bills. Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate resolve itself into the committee of the whole for the consideration of general orders, second reading of bills.
You have heard the motion. The motion is to resolve ourselves to the committee of the whole for general order, second reading of bills. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will resolve itself to the committee of the whole for consideration of general order, second reading of bills, and Senator Zenzinger will take the chair.
The committee will come to order, and the coat rule is relaxed. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 67?
Senate Bill 67 by Senators Quorum and Hansen concerning measures to strengthen civics education in Colorado.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 67 on second reading.
And the committee report?
And, pardon me, and
Committee
the
report.
Education Committee report. Thank you.
To the report.
Appreciate that, Madam Chair. Thank you. In the committee, we made one important adjustment to the bill, which is we took out the section that allowed for seal for districts if they adopted the standards. That amendment was made with broad support in committee and with stakeholders, and urge the adoption of the Education Committee report.
Is there any discussion on the report? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption. Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the report is adopted. To the bill. Senator Hansen.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And colleagues, appreciate your consideration of Senate Bill 67 this morning. And this is a bill that had been worked on for many years with my predecessor, Senator Court, along with my now co-prime, Senator Quorum. And we believe, particularly in the wake of the events that we saw over the last several months in the nation's capital and around the country, this is more important than ever. Civics is always important. It remains important. And this is a way for us to highlight the importance as the state board refreshes the standards for the districts around the state of Colorado. I also bring this bill as a way to honor the service of my dad, who was a social studies and civics teacher for 35 years. And if you can imagine this, he was actually my high school teacher for 3 out of my 4 years in high school. I don't recommend that to anyone, but we made it through. But he gave his the better part of his working life to teaching kids civics, to teaching students civics at the high school level. And I think it's so important we highlight this now, and this gives a clear direction, set of ideas that we want to make sure are included in the state standards. And I urge your support of Senate Bill 67.
Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank my good friend, the senator from Denver, for working with me on this. As he stated, this is something that we've worked on for a couple of years. Senator Court and I started out, we're working with a couple of congressmen on this. Former Congressman Mike Kaufman, Republican. Former Congressman David Skaggs, Democrat. And, you know, it just shows that we can reach common ground if we work together. And the issue is very important. And, you know, I know Senator Court is very dedicated to this and seeing it all the way through. And for those of you that served in the House, you may recall at the end of session we have something called Hummers, where the minority party spoofs the majority party. And several years of that, I was actually portrayed myself as Representative Lois Court. And I must tell you that I can actually do a Lois Court better than she can at times. And just to remind you of that, it's for the children. It's for the children. Ask for an aye vote.
There is an amendment on the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L002?
Amendment L002 to Senate Bill 67.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L002. Colleagues, no offense to any of my colleagues or friends in this chamber, what we're doing now is not my favorite part of this job. My favorite part of this job is every year I get invited by some of the social studies teachers in my district to go and teach young people about civics and how state government works. That is my favorite aspect of this job. And I've been doing it since I got elected to the state capitol. And it is amazing to see the questions that come up from our young people once they are provided the opportunity to learn about how their government works. As I was reading Senate Bill 67 this morning, and I support the bill, I noticed one slight gap in this bill and what's outlined in this bill. It talks a lot about structure of government, talks about history of government, but it didn't necessarily instruct young people how to engage with government or how to contact their public officials. That's what Amendment L002 does. It outlines that as part of the standards that we hold our civics education to, that they would provide information on how to engage with their government and how to contact their public officials. I ask for an aye vote on the amendment.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Senator Hansen.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And colleagues, I am very supportive of this amendment. I really appreciate Senator Moreno bringing L002. I think it is a great addition to this bill. I think all of us have experienced in our inboxes and the various ways we receive communication some fundamental misunderstandings about what each level of government does. And a big part of our job is to engage with our constituents, do that on a basis where they are bringing forward ideas, comments, suggestions on things we can do at the state level. And I think having this amendment in Senate Bill 67 would only reinforce that education component when the students are in high school and junior high, and will really help to reinforce the purpose of this bill. So thank you to the senator from Commerce City, and fully support L002.
The motion is the adoption of Amendment L002. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 67? Senator Kolker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise today to give you a little background on myself, a little background on civics here in Colorado, because I rise today and ask for a no vote on this bill. I am a former high school history and social studies teacher, civics, American government, and I believe in civics should be taught K through 12, and it is set up in our current standards to be taught K through 12. The standards that we're talking about today that are in this bill are already there. We are putting into statute what concerns me, into law what is controlled by local government and by our state board. What is civics? Let's talk about what it is and how it works and what the school districts currently do. Civics teaches students the complexity of the origins, structure, and functions of governments, the rights, roles, and responsibilities of citizenship, the importance of law, and the skills necessary to participate in all levels of government. Civics is a foundational component of the educational experience and critical to the continued success of our society. A democratic and free society relies on the skills, knowledge, engagement, and virtue of its citizens. I think that's something we all can agree on. This is important. Civics is important. I just feel that this bill is an example of something that it's redundant because we're already doing this. Civics standards are set up from preschool through high school. In preschool, they are to develop an awareness of the school, neighborhood, and community. They are to understand similarities and respect differences amongst people within their classroom and community. They are to support diversity. They are to provide opportunities for children to engage in community building through large group discussions with problem solving and cooperative activities. Grade school. Express an understanding of how civic participation affects policy by applying the rights and responsibility of a citizen. And I didn't say this. This is the actual standards from the Colorado Department of Ed currently. They are to analyze the origins, structures, and functions of government to evaluate the impact on citizens and the global society. They are to differentiate among examples of civic participation.
For example, voting, debating, running for office, protesting, and volunteering. That's a teaching tactic. Classroom management. They are to differentiate among examples of civic participation. They are to explain the qualities of an informed and engaged citizen. They are to study citizen participation in structures that bring security and stability to community life. They are to practice citizenship skills, including courtesy, honesty, equity, and fairness when working with others. Civic-minded individuals know the importance of fairness in conflict resolution. Diversity. The diverse perspectives and traditions of families from many cultures have shaped the United States. They are to identify similarities and differences between themselves and others. Compare one's attitudes and beliefs to others. Local government. This is a standard. To identify the origin, structures, and functions of local government. Identify and explain the services local governments provide and how those services are funded. Identify and explain a variety of roles leaders, citizens, and others play in local government. How personal advocacy and involvement can lead to change in communities. They are to describe how local government provides opportunities for people to exercise their rights and initiate change. The good senator from Senate District 21 said he goes and speaks to schools and is surprised by what they don't know. It's in our standard. So I don't think the failure is in our standards. The failure is in funding our schools and the certifications and the continuing education of our teachers so that they know to focus on these. I haven't even gotten to high school yet. This is preschool, grade school. You talk to an elementary school teacher, their focus is on reading, math, basics. That's what we test. This year's pause on CMAS is saying we are only going to test math for certain grade levels. Social studies is nowhere there. The fault and the failure here is making sure that we can fund schools to cover the standards that are already in existence. What is in this bill, I'm going to read that is already in the standards, because this goes to the high school level. In the bill, it says the three branches of government and how they interact and understanding of how laws are enacted at the federal, state, and local government levels, the methods by which citizens shape and influence government and government actions. That is already in our standards. How the United States Constitution with the Bill of Rights and State Bill of Rights and Article 2 of the State Constitution are applicable in modern society is in our standards. How the United States Constitution is amendment and the changes that have been made to it since 1787 in our standards. How other foundational documents in the United States and Colorado, including landmark United States Supreme Court decisions and significant Colorado Supreme Court decisions, aid in the formation and have subsequently affected the development of the United States and Colorado governments in our standards. In addition, the bill says, notwithstanding the requirement in section 22-7-1005 to review the preschool through elementary and secondary education standards every 6 years. We already do that. In fact, this year is the 6th year. They will start the review this year, and they will have that review completed by next summer. In Colorado revised statute, preschool through elementary and secondary education aligned standards, adoptions, revisions. This is 22-7-1005. The state board shall ensure that the preschool through elementary and secondary education standards at a minimum include standards in reading, writing, mathematics, science, history, geography, visual arts, performing arts, physical education, world languages, English language competency, economics, civics, financial literacy, and any other instructional areas for which the state board had adopted standards as of January 1st, 2008. Furthermore, in adopting revisions to the standards related to history and civics, the state board shall take into consideration any recommendations provided by the History, Culture, Social Contributions, and Civil Government in Education Commission established in Section 22-1-104.3. There is a commission established to review these standards. The standard in Colorado Revised Statute 22-1-104, teaching of history, culture, and civil government. Section 3, in an effort to increase civic participation among young people, each school district board of education shall convene a community forum on a periodic basis, but not less than once every 6 years, for all interested persons to discuss adopted content, standards in civics, including the subjects described in subsection 1 of this section, the history, cultural, social contributions, and civil government in Education Committee established in Section 22-1-104.3 shall actively participate in any such forums. There is a way for us to emphasize civics in education. It has already been established. We review it every 6 years. To me, this is an unfunded mandate because we don't fund education, and it's telling our schools exactly what they should be teaching when they already do teach it. They may not teach it at middle school or in the 5th grade or in the 3rd grade when you go ask them who your governor is and how many Congress people there are. Every district has civics in relation to what is in this bill. Now, I've spoken to, this is coming pretty quick for me, so I'm very appreciative to the social studies teachers in my district that I've spoken to. And this is what they've said to me about this bill. We don't have enough time to do all we would like to. Adding anything is always concerning, especially when making budget cuts and schedule reductions. Are we adding more standardized testing to prove the content was covered? Further, high school students that aren't civically engaged tend to do so because of their frustrations with the behaviors of those in politics from our generations, not because of what they've lacked in learning. We cannot solve the ails of civil discourse with a bill that says teach more civics. Make sure these foundations are taught. They already are. They may not be taught at the level you want them taught at when you are talking to a 5th grader or a 6th grader or a middle schooler. I taught civics, what we called American government back then, to seniors. You know what? We had local control. I got to write my curriculum. And we focused on seniors because they were tomorrow's citizens. And it was a year-long course, not a semester course. So it gave us time to teach these things. That is one thing they are missing in today's schools, is time. Classroom seat time, especially during the pandemic. Without the pandemic, they're still missing that time. Another teacher told me, if the only things tested are math and English, of course schools are incentivized to only focus on these subjects. And of course, this fits in line of thinking that says schools are at fault for the decline of civic and scientific knowledge. Schools fulfill their mission when they teach students how, not what to think, Science and social studies are two subjects in which the explanation of how and why are the focus. And the answers are often messy. July 4th, 1776 was the day I had all my students memorize. I also had them memorize all the amendments to the Constitution. So they knew that. But I also taught them how to think. They did not know I was a Democrat. When I was first elected, I got calls from former students that says, wow, we thought you were a Republican. And someone in my caucus might think that today for opposing this bill. The point was to teach them how. Yes, this information is good. Yes, we teach them this information, but we also teach them how to analyze it, how to make decisions for themselves. Another teacher told me, I'd be surprised if every district in the state doesn't have kids take some form of a U.S. government class in high school. In addition, Colorado believes wholeheartedly in local control, and school boards determine curriculum. Besides, this is another example of an unfunded mandate from the state. We have far too many of those already. The legislation is built on a false assumption we don't teach that already. And it's insulting to assume we don't, or that any social studies teacher worth their salt would argue they don't teach those concepts already. When I was first elected, one of the first things I did was to call the National Council on Social Studies. The National Council on Social Studies I used as a teacher. I used their materials, their backing to teach concepts, to help increase my ability as a social studies teacher. I called them because I wanted to do a civics bill. I wanted to increase civics education. But you know what I did next? I also called the standards professional at the Department of Education to talk about the standards that we currently have in place, to see what was missing. In talking to the National Council on Social Studies, they told me what's really missing is the funding for K through 6 teachers to have continuing education in social studies. I have always said, as a high school teacher, the person with the hardest job is the elementary teacher. They have to teach children how to read, how to write, do math, include social studies, and in many schools teach science. My degree was in history with an emphasis on secondary education. I got to focus on that. An elementary teacher has to know all of this. So if you want to increase and improve civics education, we increase and improve the ability for teachers in the elementary levels to get that certification, to get that continuing education, the emphasis on civics, not rewrite or add standards into statute that are already in our standards. I'm passionate about civics, obviously, because I'm here, because I ran for office. I was a high school teacher, an American government teacher, and in my mind, I was a dang good one. And I left in 1999 because the pay was atrocious. My first year as a public school teacher in a small town in southeast Iowa was $17,800 a year. Yeah, lower cost of living in Iowa. First-year teachers here in the metro area make $36,000 to $40,000 a year. What is $15 an hour minimum wage pay on an annual basis? If you take 2 weeks vacation, $30,000. And we're starting at 36 with a 4-year degree with student loans up to $100,000. So this bill is placing extra emphasis and problems with teachers who need funding to teach these concepts. They need the time to teach these concepts. That's the key. They need the time. With that, I ask for a no vote on this bill. Respectfully, I agree with your premise. I agree in the importance of civics. It's on the foundation in enacting it that I disagree with. Thank you.
Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I think we'll have a lesson in civics here this morning in that I join in my colleague from Centennial in asking politely for a no vote on the bill. I am not a civics teacher, but because the people of Senate District 30 have decided that I get to come here and represent them, I do get to sometimes play one on TV here in the Senate chambers. And I probably, or it would not be a surprise to you to hear me say that civics, understanding our state constitution, our state statutes, how government works, is a fascination for me. I enjoy learning about it. I have enjoyed working in this building since 2002 and learning from many great people here and being able to share the lessons that I've learned. One of the things that I find myself doing frequently is explaining to people, sometimes it's people I represent, sometimes not, our unique state constitution. And while I'm not a civics teacher, I'm also not an attorney, so I always offer that disclosure. When it comes to constitution or statutes, I can't tell you what the words mean, but I'm pretty good at pointing out maybe what words to go read for yourself and you decide. Back in 1876, the people who established this here state, they wanted something that the good senator from Centennial mentioned a few times. It was innovative, it was different. It's called local control, and it was written into our state constitution. It was different from states that were in the nation, became states early, like the original 13 colonies. It was different than states that were admitted to the Union during the first 100 years of our nation. People who moved west from places like, New York, for instance, they wanted something that was very similar to what the founders wanted in 1776. By 1876, it had changed a little bit, but they wanted out from underneath top-down centralized control of their state government, meaning governors and state legislatures, like we see today in places like New York. And when they wrote their original state constitution, and then it was ratified by a vote of the people of the Colorado Territory, and then on August 1st, 1876, when President Ulysses S. Grant signed the proclamation into law to admit Colorado as the 38th state, on day one, our state constitution, if you read Article 9, Section 15, school districts, Board of Education, the General Assembly shall by law provide for organization of school districts of convenient size, in each of which shall be established a Board of Education to exist of 3 or more directors to be elected by the qualified electors of the district. Said directors shall have control of instruction in the public schools of their respective districts. Who controls instruction in our 178 school districts today? 178 locally elected school boards. Not us. Not Governor Polis. In fact, our state governor, you realize the Colorado Department of Education, that's not a cabinet level position for our governor. That would be very unusual in other states. I don't know for sure, but I bet if you go look at New York, I bet Governor of New York has the superintendent or someone from the New York Department of Education on his cabinet. I don't know for sure, but I'll bet you $1 that's the case. That's not how it works in Colorado. The elected board, the State Board of Education, that are effectively the executive branch authority over at the Colorado Department of Education across the street, those people, 7 people currently, are elected from the 7 congressional districts in Colorado. And none of them report to the governor. They're effectively a 7-headed governor for public education. And then in each of those 178 school districts, there's a locally elected board of either 5 or 7 members, and they have control of education, or instruction is the word here in our state constitution, in the public schools of their respective districts. Not us, not the governor. So I think that's fascinating civics when it comes to the state that we're elected to represent, Colorado. And we're different. Gosh, this is not the first time that I've seen curriculum that I like. I want to thank the bill sponsors. Thank you for caring about civics. To the good Senator Court, thank you for that passion. I share it. Another curiosity, something that's unique in our state constitution that I find that a lot of people don't know, is if you look just past what I quoted earlier, I read to you Article 9, Section 15, that was about school districts. If you go to the next section, Section 16, textbooks in public schools, neither the General Assembly nor the State Board of Education shall have power to prescribe textbooks to be used in public schools. See, I imagine that in some states the legislature does have that power. In some states where a State Board of Education is comprised of people who are appointed by the governor, I imagine they do have that power. But in this state, since the very beginning, we don't. So does this bill prescribe a textbook or textbooks? No, it doesn't. So I don't think that's unconstitutional. I'm not making that charge, but it sure gets close to it. If you're prescribing curriculum, instruction, what do instructors, like the good senator from Centennial when he was a civics teacher, what do they use to fulfill those curriculum requirements? Well, probably textbooks. So we're not prescribing a textbook, but we're sure prescribing the need to choose a textbook. So, okay, I guess we can go there. I'm struggling with this because, again, I really appreciate what the bill sponsors are trying to do here. I love civics. It's changed my life. I wouldn't be here. I wasn't a civics teacher like the senator from Centennial, but I frankly have thought about maybe doing that when I'm done here. Maybe my career would sort of go in the opposite direction of the senator from Centennial. I would love to be able to see young kids or college students or even adults, their minds open up to the possibilities of understanding how their state government and their unique state constitution work. That's something I'm passionate about. So while I don't want to question the motives or disparage anyone, I think this is a great topic to advance. But I'm just not convinced that we here in the General Assembly are where these requirements should occur. And this is certainly not the first time I've had this conversation. I remember a few years ago, there was a group that brought an advocacy program from a different state to encourage an increase in physical education standards across the state of Colorado in all of our public schools. And it had succeeded in another state. How did it succeed? The advocates took the plan to the state legislature and a bill was passed. And when I looked at that, I said, well, in Colorado, it's a bit more complicated. You're going to have to go sell this idea 178 times. Because in my opinion, not an attorney, there's 178 locally elected school boards that get to make that decision as to whether they want to increase the physical education standards in their district. And if one does, or 10, or 17.8, they can. And if some don't, they don't have to. Why? Well, civics lesson, that's what our state constitution says, in my layperson opinion. So, again, I want to thank the bill sponsors. I want to thank Senator Court for her passion. I don't oppose the concept. I don't oppose having kids learn more about civics. I'm just not convinced that this is the right way to do it. So respectfully, I will be a no vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there any other discussion on Senate Bill 67? Senator Fields.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. I stand in strong support of Senate Bill 067. Why? Because we need to engage young people in civics. Because we need to teach the future. And if you know anything about young people right now, there's not a lot of confidence as it relates to government. Our students need to understand this various structure of government, and I've seen them actively participate on a variety of different issues. Just this past session, they were actively involved in the Crown Act and the policing bill, Senate Bill 217, as it relates to transparency and accountability. They watch the news, they're talking to their parents, and they want to be engaged. And they should have an opportunity to engage in this topic in schools. In school, as it relates to peace building, as it relates to civic engagement. Providing opportunities for our students to engage in real learning activities related to government and civics is important. They're working around in our world, and their voice needs to be heard. And we need to engage them. They don't need to be suffocated in violence by thinking they don't have a voice to address civic engagement. Let them share their thoughts. Let's shape them. Let's mold them. It's okay to have these discussions in a peaceful, diplomatic manner. So members, please support this bill because we need to engage young people in the future. We're teaching them their future, and it requires us to not telling them to shut up, be still, go stand in the corner. Let's have meaningful dialogue with young people, and let's engage them in our civic and government, government. So members, vote yes on Senate Bill 67.
Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to rob a line from my wife. I think she uses it against me quite a bit, but it absolutely fits here. I can explain it to you, but I cannot understand it for you. And that is exactly what is happening. I bet I'm the only one in this General Assembly that received hundreds of emails demanding that, one, I either impeach Donald Trump or I do not impeach Donald Trump. Every day I get requests on my emails, phone messages, telling me what I must do as a state senator. And many times it is a federal issue or a county commissioner issue. The fact is, we may be teaching it in the classroom. The fact is, they are not understanding or retaining. Because if you understood what we're trying to talk about here today, you would certainly not be receiving the kind of emails that I got each and every day. And think about that. Think about the emails that you got. They do not understand. And these are adults that I know have had civics. but they didn't retain. They didn't understand. Ask for an aye vote.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Madam Chair of the Education Committee as well. Colleagues, there is a sublime irony in this conversation we are having right now. We're having a conversation about, do you understand civics? How important is it to understand civics? And we are demonstrating in the course of this debate our absence of understanding of civics. Here's the way it works. You got a Constitution, and from the Constitution flow laws, and from the laws flow regulations, and from the regulations flow rules, and from the rules flow, in the case of education, standards. And from the standards flow curricula in the schools. This bill simply says Constitution, law, regulations, rules, standards, curriculum. This says, let's skip all of that and let's take the standards and put them in the statute, one step below the Constitution. Now, it's fair. Is civics important? Heck yes. We all agree civics is important. I mean, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. We're a bunch of civics people doing the job of civics. Of course we care about it. But the real question is, do we understand the sublime irony of what we're doing? Taking something that is logically and properly the province of standards and placing it in that step below the Constitution of statute. So I will tell you I was a yes on this in committee because I believe civics is important. We need to do civics. We need to lean into civics. But I will also tell you I'm conflicted because I can see the irony in this circumstance. We are putting into statute something that for all of the 10 other sets of standards that we educate to in Colorado are in the level of standards and not statutes, with the possible exception, and I think it was erroneous, mistaken, tragic that we did it, House Bill 1032 put sex education standards and curricula in many ways into the statute. I thought that was a mistake and argued against that. So I'm simply calling out the incredible, sublime irony of the fact that we are misunderstanding civics as we apply a twisted, tortured change to the normal order of civics with this particular piece of legislation. Madam Chair of the Education Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 67? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 67. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Will the clerk please read the Title II, Senate Bill 78?
Senate Bill 78 by Senators Hawkins, Lewis, and Danielson, and Representatives Sullivan and Harrod, concerning the responsibility of an individual firearm owner to report a missing firearm.
Senator Hawkins Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 78 and the Judiciary Committee report.
Is there any discussion on the Judiciary Committee report? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the report is adopted. To the bill, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 78 was a result of several years of diverse stakeholder work, all of whom are committed to reducing gun theft and gun violence in our state. We heard compelling testimony in the committee about this bill, and we know that Colorado is with us on this proposal. We learned about a 2018 poll that 87% of Colorado voters are in favor of this type of bill. So with that, I urge for an aye vote on Senate Bill 78.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Danielson.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And thank you to my co-prime sponsor and the members of the Judiciary Committee for their time and attention to this important bill. This measure is a simple one. If you do not know where your gun is, you must tell law enforcement. And that's really it. Across the country, hundreds of thousands of firearms go lost or stolen each year, which results in straw purchases and, of course, increase in trafficking. And obviously, that results in more gun violence. So this is a pretty straightforward, common sense step forward to preventing some of this unnecessary trafficking, helping law enforcement recover these weapons when they are lost or stolen, and cutting down on gun violence in our communities. I urge you to vote yes on this measure, and I thank you for your time and attention today.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members, colleagues, most important, people of Colorado. We are told that this is an important bill and this is an important thing. What this bill does in the first instance is make it a now civil infraction to not report the loss or theft of a firearm within 5 days. I am told, although I've not seen the poll, but I take it the representation at face value, that 87% of Coloradans think this bill is a good idea. They didn't have this bill in front of them, and I don't know what the question was asked, and I don't know what the prefatory questions are asked. I can do a push poll and get you to say almost anything to me. What I do know is that if it is as important, I mean, this is, you can't have it both ways. If it is as important as the sponsors say, then they ought to have the courage to impose a penalty that matters. Because the penalty for failing to do what most of us would do automatically, quickly, with a sense of violation of our space, our property, and everything else, the penalty for not doing that is $25. Now, as I noted on Thursday evening, I got a parking ticket, which I have appealed, by the way. Got a parking ticket here in Denver, and my fine was $25. So when I asked the sponsors about this, they indicated to me, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I listened closely, that this bill was about education. Well, if we want to educate people, let's pass a resolution. Even better, let's work on a license plate. Now, the response, or maybe even the opening to us in the committee was, there is an incredible, horrendous amount of gun violence, much of it with stolen firearms. This is true. This is true, colleagues and people of Colorado. This is true. And because it is, we ought to be serious about it. The last time in my memory, and this is a very personal view, I recognize, but the last time in my memory that anything very seriously was done about firearm violence in this country was actually, though it somewhat pains me to say it, it was the Clinton administration. It might have been the only firearms policy they got right. But under what was known as Project Exile, they had the United States attorneys and their staffs in this country go after
in a very aggressive way, go after those that were in possession of firearms that were stolen, otherwise illegal, possession of firearms while simultaneously possessing drugs. And those things carried a minimum 5 and 10-year sentence. And it made a difference in crime in this country, made a difference in gun violence in this country. There's a little problem for some. It also put a lot of people in prison. A lot of people in prison that were very dangerous and committed gun violence and possessed stolen firearms, and possessed firearms while possessing drugs, and had prior felonies and possessed firearms. I submit to you that this bill is feel-good. We vote for a lot of feel-good here. Seems like we're voting for more feel-good every day. Maybe the last bill was about feel-good. Members, I appreciate the sentiment. I appreciate the desire of my colleagues to do something about gun violence. I just suggest to you that if that's what we want to do, let's not talk about civil infractions and $25 penalties. The reality is that most who have a firearm stolen immediately pick up the phone, contact the police, and report it. And those that don't may not be reporting it because they don't want an encounter with law enforcement. Or they don't want law enforcement to be asking about other firearms they may have that are illegal. $25 may cause me to think twice about whether I park there or not. By the way, the meter was defective. But I think in this sense, $25 is not going to matter for the decision. Let's get serious about gun violence in this country, and that's going to mean some things that a lot of you, as my colleagues, don't like. Mandatory minimums. Arresting people immediately. Recognizing that people who own illegal firearms might be a threat to the community. Members, I'm not going to urge you to vote yes or vote no. I'm not. If it makes you feel better to vote yes, go ahead. If you want to get serious about gun violence, let's have the conversation. Thank you.
Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, colleagues, and taking a couple minutes to listen to my concerns about this. Thank you for the sponsors for continually trying to keep our community safe. I think that's what this is about, right? I don't think that the sponsors or the proponents are simply trying to aggravate our citizens for no good reason. I think the motives in this are probably pure, but I don't understand, candidly, how any of this is going to work. I really don't. I really don't know how this is going to move the needle at all in any direction for anybody. Maybe that's why this bill didn't make it to the Health Committee, like the last legal bill. I don't understand how this is going to reduce gun violence.
Because as I read the bill, what we're talking about dealing with is a gun that's already gone. We're talking about a gun that's already on the streets. This bill was addressing trying to keep guns off the streets, out of the hands of the bad people. That would be the first step, I think, in helping me understand this. But now we're dealing with a gun that's already on the streets. So that's the first question I had that I would love to get addressed. How is this going to reduce gun violence when the gun is already on the streets? Secondly, I understand this is going to help law enforcement. I'm pretty close with a lot of police officers, with my sheriff, undersheriff, lots of deputies. I haven't had anybody send me an email, leave me a voicemail, shoot me a text that said, "Senator, this is what law enforcement needs. This is the tool that is going to reduce gun violence in our state." So let me walk you through an example. I'm probably not alone across Colorado. I own a few guns. Let's say that my Remington 870 Express is stolen from my house. So I report to law enforcement, I no longer have a Remington 870 Express. As the bill reads, well, Senator, tell us a little bit about that. Well, it's a 12 gauge. Thank you. It's very helpful. Stock is wooden. A lot of the rest is metal. Well, how about the serial number? I have no idea. I'm being totally honest with you. I have no idea what the serial number of my 870 Express is. I bought it for my teenage sons so that we can go shoot sporting clays together. I don't know what the serial number is. Well, that's okay. It's not required in the bill anymore as I see it. To the extent of my knowledge, what do I know? So now law enforcement, my local law enforcement agency now knows that there is a missing 870 Express someplace. How is that going to help law enforcement colleagues? What are they going to do with that information to know that there is some 870 Express out there someplace? I would very much like to know that. Third, and probably most important, I'm guessing this came up in Judiciary Committee. I'd love to hear the comments on this. And I'm not a lawyer, and I try to spend as little time in courtrooms as I possibly can. But this is in 5 years, this is the first new crime that I've seen created where the victim of the crime is the one that is now facing the penalties. I don't think if your car gets stolen and you don't report it, I don't think that that's a crime. If it is, I'd love to hear about it. What if my tools get stolen? What if my chainsaw gets stolen, or my hatchets get stolen, or my knives get stolen out of my kitchen? What other potential weapons or instruments that can be used in committing crimes? What else falls in this? Where else? And remember, I'm the victim of the crime. Somebody stole my stuff. But now I'm the one facing some sort of liability in this. What is the precedence for this? Where else in law does this happen where if the victim isn't victim-y enough that they're now in trouble, they've now committed a crime in this? I would love to know where this is based on. And then practically speaking, so let's say you disagree with me on all of this. You've got a good reason why, even though my gun's on the street, it's now probably not going to be used in committing a crime. Law enforcement really did want to know that my 870 Express is now on the street someplace, even though I don't know anything about it other than it's a 12-gauge 870 Express. And that we've set a new bar in creating criminals in our state. Who are the criminals? Somebody who got robbed or burglarized. That's the new criminal. But let's say you disagree with all of those premises, and that I'm just being ridiculous. So practically speaking now, let's move into this actually happening. If for some reason my 870 Express gets stolen, and I don't report it, let's say, and miraculously somehow law enforcement finds my 870 Express and they come to my house, hopefully to return my 870 Express, but probably also to enforce this new law that says, you know what? You didn't report that this 870 Express was stolen. What are we thinking that our citizens are going to say? They've got two choices. One, they can say, well, I didn't know it was stolen, in which case, I guess nothing happens. And if they're then going to return my gun to me, and I want to be a Boy Scout and say, yeah, somebody broke into my house and they stole my TV and all my stereo equipment and everything else, and they stole my shotgun too, and I didn't report it. I didn't know about the law or whatever. To the senators from El Paso's point, now what happens? I get my shotgun back and I'm charged $25, $50, $500, $0? How is that helping? What problem have we solved? My gun was stolen. They brought it back. I either didn't know or I did know, and now I'm somehow a criminal. But in the big picture, colleagues, what have we done? What have we done to reduce crime in our state with this? This, to me, seems like two things. An unnecessary burden on law enforcement, who I've heard is already a bit cash-strapped. So now we've got a new burden on law enforcement, and we've created criminals out of victims. Colleagues, this makes no sense to me. I would love to hear these 4 questions answered, because right now I'm definitely a no vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Hawkes-Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We actually heard in Judiciary Committee that law enforcement is with us on this bill. We had District Attorney McCann testify in favor of this bill. We had letters from District Attorney Michael Doherty. We had testimony from Chief Herod. And we also have had in the past Chief Pazin from here in Denver, supportive of this bill. It's been very clear that stolen guns are leading to the crime in our community. Last summer, we had 5 young teenagers killed in 1 month, and it was widely reported that that was with stolen firearms. So law enforcement is with us. They want to keep our communities safer, and that is what we're doing with this bill. This is protecting our communities. It's a common sense gun owner piece of legislation.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of things. The good senator from Centennial took a lot of my talking points, so I'll be brief on some of it. But I rise in opposition of this bill. Law enforcement is not with us on this bill because one Denver police chief says that this is he supports it. Doesn't mean law enforcement does. We didn't hear from the sheriffs. Sheriffs usually stand up for our gun rights and for victims of crime. Sheriffs don't stand up for victims that get re-victimized. We didn't hear anything from other police chiefs regarding this bill. And I have the same question that the good senator from Centennial has on, he asked, how does this reduce gun violence or crime? Well, it doesn't, because there's a cause and effect. Somebody breaks into my house and steals my gun. the crime is already committed. The person already has my gun out on the street. So potentially charging me with a crime didn't reduce anything. It didn't stop anything. It's not going to stop straw purchases. That's already occurred. Let me tell you kind of what the process is. If a gun is stolen and it's recovered, which is a huge if, and it has a serial number, yeah, that gun could be returned to the rightful owner after it sits in the evidence locker for who knows how long, until maybe the case gets resolved or disposed. But if somebody doesn't know their serial number and law enforcement recovers the gun and they run the serial number, they're not going to know who it belongs to. So one of two things happen. They can check with the ATF, and the ATF then can find out who the manufacturer was of the gun after they run the serial number, and then go back to the gun store and ask the gun store, hey, who did you sell this firearm to? And then local law enforcement can go to the person that was in their records. Now, those records could be 10, 15 years old. That gun could have been sold many times. In that case, not going to know who the gun belongs to. So what they do is it's put in the storage locker and eventually destroyed. So we're not going to have more guns out there once it's recovered. It's going to go back to the rightful owner or be destroyed by law enforcement. The scenario that the good senator from Centennial brought up, got it. The good senator from the other good senator from Centennial wondering, what do you have to do a background check if the gun is brought back to him? The mandatory background check. You say, oh, that's ridiculous. He's the owner of the gun. Well, after the background check bill passed, there was a case in Fort Collins where a woman was involved in an accident. She had a firearm in her purse. The paramedics didn't want it with them, so they turned it over to local law enforcement, Fort Collins. When she asked for her gun back, they said, no, you have to get a background check, and you have to pay for it. Once again, re-victimizing a victim. There's been an analysis of these type of laws. The Rand Corporation did numerous studies, and they found no evidence demonstrating that this kind of reporting mandate in this bill in any way has an impact on criminal use of trafficking or firearms or violent crime. Moreover, that analysis found that requiring gun owners to report lost or stolen firearms is unlikely to have measurable effects on such outcomes as suicide, unintentional injuries, or death. There were approximately 32,000 guns stolen in Colorado, give or take. Now, I'm an owner of several firearms. And if I had one stolen, I'd report it because I want it back. As I'm sure most reasonable gun owners, which all of them are, legal gun owners, would want their guns back. But I'm not here to judge them or to victimize them if they don't report it to get it back. I am here to judge and criminalize those that stole the guns or are in possession of stolen firearms. Let's go after those people. And if my TV is stolen, I'm going to report it if I know the serial number. But again, why are we victimizing people that have already been victimized by a criminal? Again, let's go after the real criminals that commit theft, even though it might only be a Class 5 felony. Let's go after them and arrest them and put them in jail, but not the person who had their gun stolen from inside their house. Colleagues, I ask for no vote.
Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a great conversation to have here today. I got a text yesterday that we're in lockdown because someone was shot and killed across the street. I think we all want to talk about gun violence. But I read a thing some time back about a description of a gun. And it says a gun, like any other source of power, can be used for good, it can be used for evil. It is neither in itself. It is solely dependent on who possesses it. So let's talk about who possesses it. I actually have a friend that's on the gang unit right in this district right now. And he tells me that on a regular basis, he finds someone, arrests them, and they have a stolen gun. They're taken into custody. They bond out. And 3 or 4 days later, he arrests them again with a different gun. Yes, we need to do something about gun violence. But the answer is not finding the person that it was stolen from. The answer is that we make those responsible for the crime to begin with. They need to be prosecuted. We don't need to pat them on the back and then say, I'm sorry, you've had a poor childhood and life is not fair to you. Go forth and do good. That's not going to happen. The fact is, if you commit the crime, you should do the time. And that may solve the problem. I've heard from law enforcement in my community on this, and I can assure you there is no support. Now, what happens in Denver happens in Denver. But I only talk about Southwest Colorado. And I can tell you it is not popular in Southwest Colorado. We each vote our individual district. And if your district is gung-ho on this, vote. If your district says, I'm not the problem, I'm the victim, this would be a pretty easy no vote for you.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I stand in strong support of Senate Bill 78. Did you know that a stolen gun occurs every 2 minutes in the United States? Every 2 minutes, a gun is stolen. If you want to check my reference, you can go to the Giffords Law Center website. Every 2 minutes, a gun ends up being stolen from someone. And I heard my good friend from El Paso County talk about that he felt this bill was a feel-good piece of legislation. But I can tell you, anyone that has experienced gun violence does not feel that that's a good thing. Whenever you've been exposed or victimized due to gun violence, then we need to put measures in place. And this measure, this Senate Bill 78, is not about feeling good. It's about the social contract. Because once a gun is stolen, we don't know the chain of custody of where that gun might end in somebody's hands. It could be used in a robbery. It could be used in rape. It could be used in a mass murder. So basically, this is putting some sense of responsibility If your gun is stolen, or just like somebody robs your house, you report it to the police. Let them do their work. Just by just saying, oh, my gun's stolen. I don't care about the common good, about my neighbor, or that gun being a part of a suicide or a homicide. I'm just going to be silent about it. I heard someone mention that some people don't want to encounter the police when their gun is stolen. That is probably true, but doesn't make it right. If you are the appropriate owner of that gun and it comes up missing and stolen, you need to report it to the police and let them do their job. Because if you don't, there could be consequences. I see it happening every day where people are using guns inappropriately, where murder is taking place, theft is taking place, robbery is taking place, rape is happening somewhere, and they're using a gun. And if you know that you had a gun and all of a sudden it's missing, and you're saying, well, I don't want to pay a $25 fine. I mean, in the bill, it does have criteria in reference to how much time you have to report the lost weapon. In the state of Colorado, in the United States, we're governed by all kinds of laws. We heard one member talk about a traffic ticket. Some people, it could be about renewing their tags, their license. We're governed by laws. And if we want to keep guns out of the hands of people that should not have them, because they have not gone through a background check, mentally they may not be stable to have a gun, your gun is missing and you want to be silent. No one's trying to victimize anybody. Report the gun stolen. That's what we want you to do. But if you want to be the type of person that wants to see your gun go underground to commit a serious crime, then that's an issue. Because all you have to do is pick up the phone and tell someone your gun is stolen. I don't think that's asking too much. If you want to buy a gun, you have to get a background check. And once they do the background check, they say that you're cleared to have a gun. It might be inconvenient, but it's the law. So if your gun comes up missing, and the state of Colorado requires you, if this bill passes, that you report it, then you have to report it within the time frames that are outlined. I'm not trying to make anybody a victim. And I don't think this bill victimizes responsible gun ownership. Because most of the people that I know that have guns, they're not careless with it. They know when their gun is missing. Most of them do. I don't know. But there are people who are in the market of stealing guns because they don't want to go through the requirements to ensure that they should have custody of a gun. They don't want to do the background check. They don't want to do the transfer of a sale to make sure that that background check. We have universal background checks in the state of Colorado. That's the law. This is not law yet, but if your gun's missing, report it. Just like if there's a missing person. Most people report that that person is missing. A $25 fine or whatever is not asking too much because we are a part of the common good. That means that we all are responsible for public safety. So if we know that a gun is missing, and we know it might end up in the hands of someone that's not responsible, as a citizen, wouldn't you want to share that with the police? Wouldn't you want the police to know that someone stole my gun? Unless it was stolen in the first place. If your gun is missing, your gun is stolen, if this bill passes, you're required to report it. Gun theft in our nation and in the state of Colorado is on the increase. It's not going down, and I'm not speaking for law enforcement. I'm looking at the data. We have criminals that are out there snatching and grabbing guns. And so even these gun shops should be reporting that. I'm quite sure they are because the inventory is not cheap. So members, in my view, this is a really simple bill. If you own a gun and it comes up missing or it comes up stolen, the bill requires that you report that to the police within a certain time frame. Thank you.
Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have been asked in some interviews, I suppose some constituents have reached out, could I support this bill? And my response was, well, I haven't, earlier I hadn't seen it yet. And one thing I was interested to know was, would this duty to report create an affirmative defense and a presumption of innocence? That if you've reported that no matter what happens with that firearm, you're not responsible. And I thought that was kind of an intriguing concept, but I had no idea where this bill would go. Same with a bill that's coming over from the House, I think, dealing with safe storage. If you do it right, do you have an affirmative defense? That's not what this bill does. Unfortunately, this bill further victimizes the victim. So who would not report firearms being stolen? Well, somebody who has a stolen firearm, I think that person would generally be classified as a criminal. They're not going to go get a background check. They very often don't qualify for background checks, so they steal firearms or buy them from people on the street. Will this bill change that? I don't think it will. If I have valuables stolen from my home, and electronics, the good senator who doesn't live in Centennial mentioned that earlier, but that's a great point. If my televisions are stolen, do I have the serial numbers? Have I engraved something? Have I put some protective sticker on it that would allow me to identify which television is mine if it's ever recovered? I'd have to go back and look. If my firearm is stolen, do I know the serial number? Because there isn't a registration database. We've dealt with that before, where prior legislation was based on this idea that there was, and there isn't. So if a firearm is stolen from my home, do I know which one it is? Well, the bill's been amended now with a committee report to take out the requirement that I report the serial number, because I think the good senator, who doesn't live in Parker either but lives in Douglas County, pointed out If you had the serial number and the firearm is recovered, then you could prove that one is mine. But I think the good senator from Douglas County mentioned he had possibly a Remington 870, very common shotgun, maybe one of the most common. But there's a lot of different models, designs. Do you have synthetic stocks or wood stock, or what gauge is it? But now we don't have to have the serial number. So I guess you can't be a criminal if you don't report the serial number. But if I had valuables stolen, my wife and I have insurance, and I would report them stolen so that I could get my property replaced through my insurance. So I don't have a problem with reporting, but what happens here? There's no presumption of innocence. There's no reward for good behavior. You report your lost, stolen firearm, and then it's used in a crime. We don't want that. Is there any presumption of innocence? Is there any defense that you follow? No. In fact, there's now a public record that that was your gun. What do you think the odds are that someone's going to take that information and then blame you for not storing your guns in a way that they can't be stolen? Well, that's public record. That's your gun. Even though you didn't steal it from yourself, even though you didn't go out and commit that violent crime, whatever it might be, this bill doesn't protect you. This bill makes you more vulnerable because you followed the law. And I think that's just wrong. I'm not suggesting that the bill sponsors are trying to do that. I don't want to question motives, but when I look at it, I just think about how our culture works today, that even if you store your guns safely, even if you have them insured, even if you record your serial number, even if you do everything right and then it's stolen, someone breaks into your home, breaks into your gun safe, steals your prized possession. I have one that my parents gave me when I was a kid, and then I gave to my sons. It's something I really treasure. But if I do the right thing and I report it, and insurance gives me another one of those that isn't the same one, that doesn't have all the memories attached to it, even if I do the right thing and report it stolen, if that's somehow used in a violent crime, can you give me any assurance that when I've done everything right, that society doesn't blame me for some violent occurrence that a criminal commits with that firearm? So I think that's a real risk. If there had been an affirmative defense, some protection for the gun owner, the citizen, the law-abiding citizen to follow this new proposed law, then maybe, I'd still want to look at the bill, but it's not there. The last thing I want to say, Madam Chair, is back in 2013, my good friend from Aurora and I were both in the House, and I was the first one to come up and speak on a different bill that she was the sponsor of. And I remember a day or two later that my brother-in-law called from, or maybe emailed from Milwaukee and said, "Hey, I saw you on TV, and you choked up." You know, sometimes I get emotional about things. I care about the Second Amendment, but I also care about my friend from Aurora. I've related that sometimes I visit the bike path that runs between Acres Green under E470 into the Park Meadow Mall area. I've related before how hard it is for me to go through that area because that's where her son was found. Yeah, I understand. And when I stood up to speak against that bill in 2013, I had the Constitution visualized before me. And I had my friend sitting on the bench there in the well of the House, sitting there as well. And I know that this is important to her. I know the pain that she and her family has experienced. And if there's a way that I can try to help solve this issue, I'm willing to try. But I voted no on that bill, and I'm a no vote on this bill, because I don't believe for a moment that this is going to deter gun theft or gun violence, but I do see how this subjects innocent, law-abiding citizens who are victims of theft, who report that theft, to be canceled by our current culture. And I don't think that's what the intent of the bill is, but I'm very concerned that that would be the result. Ask for a no vote.
Senator Woodward. Never mind. Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair and colleagues. So I asked a few questions. We had, I believe, folks in favor of the bill come up and speak, but didn't answer any of the questions. And on something like this, I really don't feel it's that much to ask. These aren't gotcha questions. These are honest requests to try to figure out what are we envisioning here? What are we thinking is going to happen? So instead of going through all 4 questions again, I respectfully ask that somebody just start with maybe one of them. So we heard guns are stolen all the time. No objection to that. I don't question whether or not that's accurate. Yes, guns are stolen all the time. There's too much gun violence in the country. Okay, agreed. But what I asked was, if the gun is already stolen, how is this going to help? If the gun is already on the street, because this bill doesn't talk about keeping the gun off the street. This bill doesn't talk about how do we keep it from being in the hands of people we don't want it to be in. This bill is only talking about what happens when the gun is on the street already. I think that's irrefutable. Concerning the responsibility of an individual firearm owner to report a missing firearm. That's the title of the bill. We're talking about a firearm that is already missing. So since it is already missing, what we heard is this is going to reduce gun violence. So for now, forget about the other 3 questions. Let's just start with that one. The gun is already missing. It's already in the hands of people we don't want it to be in. How is this going to reduce gun violence? Would love an honest answer on that.
Senator Woodward.
Yep.
Never mind. Again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well,
Senator
it's
Gardner.
obvious. I listened to the questions from the senator from Douglas County who serves on Health and Human Services, to which he's having difficulty getting answers. And somehow we weren't able to get those answers in the Judiciary Committee. And my colleague from Health and Human Services has such good questions. Madam Chair, I move that this bill be referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services. Madam Chair, I withdraw my motion.
So the motion is to refer this bill to the Health and Human Services Committee,
I withdraw the motion.
and the motion has been withdrawn. 3rd time's a charm. Senator Woodward?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was hoping that the bill sponsor was going to come up and answer one of the 4 questions that the good senator from Douglas County asked because I think they're important questions about what the purpose and ultimately what the impact of this bill was going to be. So I hope that those answers are forthcoming. One of the recurring themes in pending legislation this year seems to be an effort to charge victims and law-abiding citizens with a crime. Here again, if you're the victim of a crime, this bill turns you into the criminal. So let's say you're a young woman who keeps a firearm at home for self-protection. Late one night, you get home to find an intruder. That intruder sexually assaults the victim, then burglarizes the house and takes her gun. If that were to happen today, that victim might choose not to report that, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of shame. But if this bill passes, that victim of sexual assault becomes a criminal if she fails to report that crime. And that's absolutely inappropriate to charge victims with crimes. So I think I would like to offer an amendment to remedy that issue.
There is an amendment on the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L003?
Amendment L003 to Senate Bill 78. Amend printed bill, page 3, after line 3, insert the section does not apply to a person whose firearm was stolen during an incident in which the person was a victim of sexual assault.
Senator Woodward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L003.
To the amendment?
Madam Chair, what this amendment does is it makes it clear in this statute that if you are the victim of a sexual assault and in that same incident someone steals your firearm, the government's not going to turn around and turn you into the criminal. And I'd ask for your aye vote.
Is there any discussion on Amendment L003? Senator Hawkes Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of this bill is to report your weapon, your gun, your firearm, when it's missing, when you discover that it's missing, when you discover that it's stolen, so that you are on the record of not having it in your possession at the time of the crime. That protects gun owners. So we do not need this amendment, and I ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment L003. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The noes have it, and the amendment is lost. Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 78? Senator Heisey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Without repeating what's already been said, I'll try to be succinct here. But if you, like me, want to stop gun violence, this is not your bill. It does nothing to stop criminal acts with a gun, any gun. If you, like me, want to create a new don't want to create a new class of criminals that provides no benefit to public safety, this is not your bill. Please vote no.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 78? Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 78. We've got this unique procedural tradition here in the process of vetting and understanding legislation. If you're creating a new crime, the Fiscal Note Department has to check into that. The fact that the Fiscal Note Department has a whole section in the Fiscal Note saying, here's what it means about this new crime that you're creating, I think that tells you everything you need to know. It doesn't do anything to improve safety and yet creates a new crime. I oppose this bill and urge you to join me in that opposition.
Senator Woodward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few minutes ago, we ran an amendment that tried to protect those who are victims of sexual assault. If that doesn't excuse that person from this effort to criminalize that person, perhaps we need to look at some other circumstances under which weapons are stolen.
There is an amendment on the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L004?
L004 to Senate Bill 78. Amend printed bill, page 3, after line 3, insert, this section does not apply to a person whose firearm was stolen during an incident in which a member of the person's immediate family is a victim.
Senator Woodward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L004.
To the amendment?
Madam Chair, this bill says, as written, that if you are the victim of a crime and somebody steals your firearm and you don't report it within the first 5 days, you become a criminal. Let's say in that same event, your family is assaulted and some of your kids are taken, they're kidnapped. Your mind is focused on how to recover the family members. Your focus is not on thinking about that firearm that was stolen at the same time. So what this amendment does is it says that if you have your gun stolen in the process of a horrendous crime in where your family is kidnapped, you are excused from this effort to criminalize you. And I ask for your aye vote.
Senator Hawkes Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, we really did a lot of outreach to many different groups when we were designing this bill, and I'm really grateful to the Colorado Criminal Defense Bar because they really enlightened us about what's coming forward to all of us in the session. And what we've learned is that petty offenses and class 3 misdemeanors are going to be eliminated. And I think that we did a really good job with our second amendment to make sure that folks that, maybe they couldn't report the gun within the time period, that this will be really a civil offense. So we don't want to add on additional penalties. We don't want to do anything else that would make this harder on folks. In fact, this bill will make sure that their firearms are returned as long as they do the proper reporting. So this L004 is really not needed, and we ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L004? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of Amendment L004. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. And the amendment is lost. Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, colleagues.
Senator Smallwood, there is an amendment on the desk. Should we go ahead? There is. So should we go ahead and...
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, let's move Amendment 6.
Okay. Will the clerk please read Amendment L006 first?
Amendment L006 to Senate Bill 78.
Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So colleagues...
Could you go ahead and move it just real quickly, now that he has read it? We got to read it first before you can move it. Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment 6.
Perfect. Thank you. Go ahead.
Was it not moved before?
So for those of you that are listening at home, it's just a matter of procedure. Our clerk has to read the amendment first, and then we move the amendment. And so we were just making sure that we had things in order. Go ahead and proceed, Senator Smallwood.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thanks for the citizens of Colorado for that brief delay. I think what we're seeing from the good senator from Loveland brings up an excellent point. There's no latitude built into Senate Bill 78 around extenuating circumstances for our victim that is now about to become a criminal. So when we think that you need to report your firearm within 5 days, again, if you didn't know that it was taken, that's fine. You're probably not a criminal. But if you did know, you're a criminal no matter what. So what the good senator from Loveland is talking about is, what about situations where that victim of theft is going through something absolutely horrific right now. We've talked about kidnapping, okay? Candidly, as a father of 3, I can't even imagine that if my home was the victim of a violent crime and my children were taken, that along with my possessions, that one of the first things I'd be thinking about is, oh yeah, I need to remember to tell law enforcement that my gun was stolen, along with all the other damage that's done to my home. So what about homicide? Can we at least get that, colleagues? Somebody in your family was killed during a home invasion, and they've now taken your property, and among dealing with the death of a family member, can we at least excuse those victims or give them some period of time before they need to report their now missing firearm? I'd ask for an aye vote on Amendment 6.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Hawkes Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment L006. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. The amendment is lost. Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 78? Senator Danielson. Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 78. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 78 is adopted. Majority Leader Fenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion before the committee is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The aye has it, and the committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come to order. Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a number of bills under the consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs leave to report has had under consideration the following attached bills being the Senate. Second reading thereof and makes the following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 67 as amended, Senate Bill 78 as amended, passed on second reading in order and engrossed and placed in the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the report.
The motion is for the adoption of the committee of the whole report. Are there any no votes? There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment 001 to the committee of the whole?
Amendment 001 to the committee of the whole.
Senator Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Woodward Amendment 001 to the committee of the whole report.
To the amendment, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you recall, we had a discussion about whether or not we should criminalize those folks who are the victims of sexual assault when simultaneously someone takes their weapon. It's very clear that this body stands with and for and will protect the rights of those victims of sexual assault, and I would ask for your yes vote.
Is there further discussion on Amendment 001? Senator Hawkes Lewis.
Mr. President, I urge a no vote on this amendment.
Further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment Amendment 001 to the committee of the whole. Are there any no votes? Senators Danielson, Buckner, Patterson, Coleman, Lee, Hanson, Story, Janal, Rodriguez, Bridges, Winter, Colker, Fields, Gonzalez, Moreno, Zenzinger, the Majority Leader, Huckus Lewis, please add Senator Donovan. Please add the President. With 15 aye votes, 20 no votes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Amendment 001 is lost. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment 002 to Committee of the Whole report?
Amendment 002 to the Committee of the
Senator
Whole.
Smallwood.
Good morning, Mr. President. Thank you. I'm not sure that everybody was in the room when we went over this last.
Would the good senator please move the amendment?
Absolutely, Mr. President. I move the Smallwood Amendment 2.
To the amendment, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. So again, I'm not sure everybody was in the room when we talked about this. I get that, first of all, I'm not going to get any of my 4 questions answered on the bill. But also, candidly, I would find it very hard to believe that we cannot come up with any exceptions to this rule. That no matter what happened within your household, what happened to your family, that as a body we're going to say we don't care. The first thing you have to think about doing is reporting that stolen firearm. So again, what this amendment is doing is simply allowing us a chance to say, if your family members were killed, colleagues, that maybe there can be an exception for those Coloradans under this bill. I'd ask for your aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Amendment 002? Senator Huckus Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for a no vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Having no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment 002 to the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? Senators Lee, Buckner, Winter, Pedersen, Danielson, Hanson, Story, Gonzalez, Coleman, Rodriguez, Moreno, Colker, Janal, Zenzinger, Fields, Huckus Lewis, Bridges, the Majority Leader. Please add the President, and Senator Donovan. Please add the President. With 15 aye votes, 20 no votes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Amendment 002 is lost. The question before the body is adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 067 as amended. Senate Bill 078 as amended. Passed on second reading. Ordered and grossly placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Change in sponsorship. The following change in bill sponsorship will occur. Senator Janal will be added as a Senate co-prime sponsor with Senator Gardner on Senate Bill 075. Message from the House.
March 9, Mr. President, the House has passed on third reading and transmitted to advisory statutes. House Bills 1161, 1015, 1107 amended as printed in House Journal March 8. March 9th, Mr. President, the House has passed on third reading and transmitted to advisory statutes. House Bills 1106 amended as printed in the House Journal March 8, 2021.
Message from the reviser.
March 9th, to the Senate, we hereby transmit without comment as amended House Bills 1015, 1106, 1107, and 1161.
Consideration of resolutions Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move HJR 1002 layover until tomorrow, March 10th.
Seeing no objection, Senate Joint Resolution 1002 will lay over until 3/10/21 under the rules.
There's only 3.
Consideration House amendments. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 042?
Senate Bill 42 by Senators Moreno and Representative McCluskey concerning a supplemental appropriation of the offices of Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and Estate Planning and Budgeting.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate concur to House amendments on Senate Bill 42.
Will the good senator please tell us why we should concur with House amendments on Senate Bill 042?
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, the House added a footnote to this bill. Just to jog your memory, this is the bill that will direct some additional resources to the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. They added a footnote just to say that those new resources, those increased resources to OEDIT, will first be concentrated on job creation and a preference given to businesses that have their operations in Colorado. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is that the Senate concur with House amendments on Senate Bill 042. Are there any no votes? With 35 aye votes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, that motion is adopted. Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the repassage of Senate Bill 42 as amended.
The motion is for the repassage of Senate Bill 042. Are there any no votes? Senator Smallwood. With 34 aye votes, 1 no vote, 0 absent, and 0 excused, will the clerk please record Senator Lundin as a no vote on Senate Bill 042? No votes on the repassage of Senate Bill 042. With 33 ayes, 2 no votes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Senate Bill 042 is repassed. Co-sponsors. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 053?
Senate Bill 53 by Senators Moreno and Zenzing and Representative McCluskey and McLaughlin concerning adjustment to school funding for the 2020-21 budget year and in connection therewith making appropriations.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate concur with the House amendments to Senate Bill 53.
Will the good senator from Jefferson County please tell the body why we should concur with House amendments on Senate Bill 053?
We made an amendment on some adjustments for the CSI school funding here in the Senate, but unfortunately the math didn't quite work out, so we had to fix that in the House, and so I urge an aye vote on this concurrence.
Is there further discussion? Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So just a question to clarify, I'm not completely certain myself. CSI is short for the Charter School Institute. This is the statewide district that continuously struggles to make the effort to fund all students in Colorado, those in government neighborhood schools and those in charter schools equally. I just want to make sure that we didn't move down the money going to CSI, we moved it up, and thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. President.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you so much, the good senator from Monument and not Lendingville. We agree that the amount did not go down. In fact, the amount went up. It was just a technical error on how we calculated that amendment over here in the Senate. And it is definitely our intent that the first time when the bill was written, they were unintentionally left out. Our amendment here in the Senate put them back in, and the amendment in the House just fixed the technical details of that amendment.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. And yes, I second the comments from my colleague from Jefferson County. It's really a rebalancing that occurred in the House. The additional resources for the CSI schools was intended to address enrollment declines. Because the language wasn't quite specific enough, it had resulted in some of the appropriation going to a school that actually had an enrollment increase when the intent was to address those that had experienced a decline in enrollment, particularly amongst their at-risk students.
Having no further discussion, the motion before the body is that the Senate concur with House amendments on Senate Bill 053. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, that motion is adopted. Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the repassage of Senate Bill 53, and I just want to remind you colleagues that this was an unanimous vote out of the Senate when we sent this bill over to the House, and I sincerely hope that we are able to achieve that once more today. Thank you very much for your support and for your consideration on this really important bill.
The motion is for the repassage of Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I want to revisit the fact that this was unanimous coming out of this committee, and we also had a unanimous conversation, R&D, Republican and Democrat, saying we must be aware of the fact that the money does not flow where the students go currently. We've got to fix that. We've got to make this about the money flowing where the students are going. And we had a good unanimous conversation on that. This bill does not do that. This bill is important in keeping us moving forward, but this principle that the money must be about the students and not the institution will be a principle that you will hear me speak about every time we talk about the $13 billion plus in aggregate that we spend in public education. It must be about the students. Thank you, Mr. President.
The motion is for the repassage of Senate Bill 053. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Senate Bill 053 is repassed. Co-sponsors. Please add Senator Scott. Senator Smallwood. Co-sponsors. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 055?
Senate Bill 55 by Senator Moreno and Representative Ransom concerning the collection of debts owed to the state and in connection therewith reducing an appropriation.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 55.
Would the good senator from Commerce City please tell us why we should concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 055?
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, you may recall this is a bill that repeals the central collections unit within state government. Those responsibilities will then flow to the state controllers of each department. This just is really about conforming amendments that were needed in the transfer of that authority to each different department.
Is there any discussion? The motion is that the Senate concur with House amendments on Senate Bill 055. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, that motion is adopted. Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the repassage of Senate Bill 55 as amended.
The motion is for the repassage of Senate Bill 055. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Senate Bill 055 is repassed. Co-sponsors. Members, before we proceed moving forward with consideration of governor's appointments, I do want to raise a point of information, and remind you that it is a common custom and practice for members seeking consideration of House amendments that we hiss when they make that proposal. Not at me, it's just consideration of governor's appointments, consent calendar. Well played. Will the clerk please read the appointments listed on the consent calendar?
Members of the Colorado Water Conservation Board, effective February 13, 2021, for terms expiring February 12, 2024. Robert Sakata, Brighton, Colorado, serve as representative of the South Platte Drainage Basin as Republican appointed. Cornette Trick of Colorado, serve as representative of North Platte Drainage Basin as Republican appointed. Stephen A. Anderson of Olathe, Colorado, serve as representative of the Gunnison Uncompahgre Drainage Basin as Republican reappointed.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the confirmation of all the appointments listed on the consent calendar, which includes members of the Colorado Water Conservation Board.
Is there any discussion? The motion is for the confirmation of the appointments listed on the consent calendar. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, those appointments are confirmed. Governor's appointments. Will the clerk please read the appointment to the Board of Trustees for the Metropolitan State University of Denver?
Member of the Board of Trustees for Metropolitan State University of Denver, effective December 3rd, 2024, term expiring December 3rd, 2024. Michael Kopp of Denver, Colorado, serve as a Republican appointed.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of Mike Kopp of Denver, Colorado, to serve as a member of the Board of Trustees for Metropolitan State University of Denver. And members, if I could just speak to the motion for a moment. The testimony in this committee on this particular individual was riveting, just riveting. It was emotional. It was an up and down experience. It was really a roller coaster of emotion. And so I think in the end, the committee ended up on an upswing, on a positive note. And so with that, I would just entertain your consideration for this former legislator of this body to this board. Thank you.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I join my good friend from Arvada, Jefferson County, in asking for your careful consideration here. This nominee, this appointee, would carry the title of trustee, having previously had the title of senator. This nominee, this appointee, I trust, Mr. President, that you expect all of us to treat these original desks here in the Senate chamber with respect. This appointee has the audacity to have his name printed on the front of that desk right there. Mr. President, I wonder if a fine might be appropriate. This nominee served in this chamber and left before his term was up. The people of his district elected him, and he left before the term is up. Mr. President, the reason for that is that he went to care for his wife who was suffering with cancer. And my friend Mike Kopp absolutely deserves this. Thank you, Mike, for standing up once again for the people of Colorado and taking on this new responsibility. A bit of teasing, but with all due respect, my dear friend, thank you for looking out for her needs and your family's needs and leaving this beautiful chamber. You're a great leader, and I'll be happy to support the nomination.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is a confirmation of Senator Mike Kopp to the Board of Trustees for the Metropolitan State University of Denver. Are there any no votes?
I knew Mike Kopp. Mike Kopp was a friend of mine.
With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Senator Mike Kopp is confirmed. Announcements. Senator Bridges and Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, colleagues, please listen up. Today is Aerospace Day at the Capitol. Although this year we are doing it virtually, we have many people joining us and watching online throughout the day. We will have an Aerospace and Defense Caucus panel at noon. There will be an exhibitor showcase online where the companies will highlight their exciting programs, what they're working on across the state, and that will begin at 3 p.m. Feel free to join us. You need to search, if you haven't already gotten the link, search Colorado Aerospace Day at the Capitol or something close to that. Your search engine will find it. Colorado Aerospace Day at the Capitol, and register and go online. If you have any time at all in the afternoon, the things that are happening, we put the agenda out on your desk, and my colleague will share some important facts about Colorado aerospace.
Thank you, Senator. It is Colorado Aerospace Day at the Capitol, not at the Capitol. On Zoom, again, you should have the links. Very interesting conversations today, some amazing presentations. And Colorado remains the #1 state in the country for private aerospace employment concentration. 33,460 Coloradans are directly employed in aerospace, with the cluster directly and indirectly supporting more than 230,000 jobs and over $4 billion in annual payroll. This is a key part of our Colorado economy, and it includes 28,820 military aerospace jobs here in the state.
We have over 290 aerospace companies and suppliers, and 63% of those companies are not the big guys. They have 10 employees or fewer. They're small businesses, not just large prime contractors. 9 of the nation's top aerospace contractors do have significant operations in this state, which brings all of the opportunity for the small business contractors to thrive and grow and to incubate and make such an important part of our economy.
Aerospace is a key part of our economy, and today we have the opportunity with Colorado Aerospace Day at the Capitol, not at the Capitol, to learn more about this critical Colorado industry. We hope you will join us again. Google Colorado Aerospace Day at the Capitol for the link to watch the show. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Senator Janot. Announcements. Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues of the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, we are meeting upon adjournment. That's going to be in 15 minutes. So grab yourself a piece of fruit or whatever you have. We have 3 bills up: Senate Bill 97, Senate Bill 14, and Senate Bill 103. We're going to be meeting in Committee Room 357 in 15 minutes.
Senator Janot.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Local Government Committee is going to meet today at 2 o'clock in room 352. We're hearing one bill, Senate Bill 84. Thanks.
Senator Gonzalez.
Gracias, Presidente. To the members of the Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, we will be meeting at 2 o'clock promptly in the old Supreme Court. We do have a change to the order of the bills that we will be considering today. And so first we will be hearing Senate Bill 129 by Senator Garcia, followed by Senate Bill 130 by Senator Holbert, followed by Senate Bill 32 by Senator Donovan, followed by Senate Bill 005 and Senate Bill 10 by Senator Woodward. See y'all then.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of Senate Transportation and Energy, we will be meeting at 2 p.m. today in 357. We will be hearing Senate Bill 125, and we will be laying over Senate Bill 72 until next Tuesday. So anyone that is excited about Senate Bill 72, you're going to have to wait until next Tuesday.
Having no further announcements, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We do have a bill to read across later. You do not need to be here, but you're welcome to join the party. Mr. President, I move the Senate recess until 12 noon today.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes having the motion is adopted. The Senate will stand in recess until 1200 hours today.